Okay, guys, welcome back to the Let's Get Freaky podcast. Very excited. I've got an awesome guest for us tonight, guys. We've got Mark Anderson with us from Scottish Paranormal. How are you, brother? Thank you so much for being
Yeah,
here, man.
I'm good, Tommy. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
I'm
Yeah,
excited. I'm excited to have you, man. We was very recently on the great Andy Decode show, or Andy Booth now.
yeah.
He's gone back to Andy Booth. We was
All
on.
right, yeah. He's going from decoach to
He's
booth.
come out. He's come out. We was we was on his show a couple of
Yeah,
weeks back now, and you was
yeah.
awesome, man. Like you was coming out with some very interesting stuff, and I was like, "Ah, I need to get this man on. Let's get freaky. So here we
Thank
are.
you.
So thank you
It
very much for
was,
being here.
yeah, it was good on Andy's show. For anybody that's not seen it, it was a paranormal pizza party, and we were all having a few drinks and a few and some pizza. And actually, my wife had actually had the pizza. No, no, sorry, it was a Domino's. Sorry, we normally she has homemade pizza. And I had a few drinks, and I was a very last person to speak about. And everything that was spoken about, I actually didn't know something about. And it came about spiritual roads. I'm like, what does that mean, spiritual roads? Does it mean like spiritual paths, or does it mean roads that have got paranormal things on them? And actually, I was a bit half cut by the time it came over. So yeah, I'm not like that tonight.
No, it was a lot of fun. It was like a
Yeah.
panel podcast. As you say, we was eating pizza, we was having a
Hmm.
couple of drinks. It was very laid back and
Yeah.
chilled, but still, we got into some interesting topics, dragons,
Yeah.
yeah, all sorts of things. So it was an
Yeah.
interesting one, man. But
It was
I,
really
I'd
good.
I'd love. So you're based in Scotland, in Dundee.
I'm based in Scotland. No, I'm not. I'm originally from Dundee, and I lived there for 26 years, and then I moved to Fife, and there's quite an unknown hotspot around there where I lived. I'm happy to speak about that,
Yeah,
and I
man.
can speak about. There's actually some research going on just now. Spoken to a couple of the witnesses, and I can tell you about that. But now I live in a town called Livingston, and
Okay.
Livingston is essentially a commuter town of Edinburgh. So there's a motorway, the M8, between Edinburgh and Glasgow. And it does go a bit beyond Glasgow, but the main part of it is between Edinburgh and Glasgow. And Livingston is on this town. And there's a lot of paranormal activity that happens around here. One of the more, probably the most famous Scottish UFO case was called the Bob Taylor incident or the Deckman Woods incident, and that happened literally a mile away from me. It happened in a woodland. A forester actually was attacked by a UFO, and it was investigated by the police. And it was the only time that the police have ever investigated a UFO incident in the UK. So
Wow.
I actually have spoken to the police officer, and he's not a believer, but he actually says that what Robert Taylor said that day actually makes more sense than what the skeptics have come out with to actually debunk the story. So
Interesting, man.
it's really interesting. The place is absolutely it's just really active.
Wow. Would you be able to share what happened in that UFO incident?
Yeah, of course. So it happened just before I was born. It was happened in November 1979. And what I could do, maybe to give you a bit of context about this area. So Livingston is in a town called West Lothian, and there's a lot of paranormal activity that happens in and around West Lothian. While people probably know Bonnybridge for being a bit more active, it's actually not the hotspot. It's actually not the hotspot that it used to be. It's actually West Lothian is where most things happen. And if you've had Chris Meek on the show, you've probably heard about the Bathgate Hills and all the incidents that happen around there. That's actually in West Lothian. It's only about 2 miles away from Deckman Woods. It's not far at all. And the area used to have a castle on it, and then the castle was owned by people that actually owned shale oil. At one point, Scotland had, before oil like we know it now, shale oil used to be the biggest like oil that there was, and West Lothian have was actually a big producer of that oil, the oil that they had, and it made a lot of people very rich. And they actually had a castle in this ground. So where the ground is, there's a lot of weird things happening. And what we've found, I've done a lot of research around there, and there's lots of paranormal activity happens around there, even to this day. So on 1979, what actually happened, the West Lothian Council had actually bought over this estate. The castle had been into a ruined estate, and it's actually now just houses. There's nothing of the castle left anymore. The council decided to create a woodland there, and it's actually called Deckman Woods. So Deckman is I don't know, it's about 40 acres, something like that. It's a relatively big park, and it's beautiful. You just go in there, it's like Endor from Star Wars. It's just a very forestry area. But at that time, all the forest was quite young. It was only maybe a few years old. And one of the forestry workers was a guy called Robert Taylor. And he went with a dog called Lara. He had a red Irish settler. And he walked up to where the incident was. And this UFO was it was like almost like a classical UFO, like flying saucer, but with like a dome shaped on it. And Robert Taylor said there was flannel around it as well. And it was like appearing and disappearing into reality, almost like if you saw in Star Trek or Harry Potter, somebody this it was just like disappearing and reappearing. It went into physical existence, came into our realm essentially, and then two almost like sea mines, like small balls with like metallic spikes, actually just dropped from the craft, rolled over to Robert Taylor and grabbed him. And he said he smelled a really strong sulfuric smell. He lost consciousness and he woke up and he was quite dazed, he was quite confused, and he found his dog was still running, it was still barking right next to him. So Robert Taylor lived in a estate called Dean's, which is not that far away from where I am. It's about a mile away from where he was attacked. So instead of going back to the office, he went to his house. He got his wife to call the supervisor, and the supervisor called the police. All the forestry workers actually took metal, like they actually cordoned off where the metallic spikes actually dropped and captured and actually attacked him. He's actually left like trailer, almost like those kind of trails in the ground. So it was actually physical evidence, which is really really rare. And then Mr. Taylor's trousers actually were then sent away for analysis by the police. So there's actually physical evidence of this attack. And the police officer who investigated it did a really, really thorough job. And it created it's like maybe a tank, the way the tank have got that kind of the wheels and they've got that kind of their own track, the track around it, and they kind of roll over that.
Hmm.
And he went through every single one of the vehicles in West Lothian to see the tire marks or the track marks correspond to what the track marks were at Beckman Woods, and none of them actually corresponded. And to make it worse, they just like landed, like somebody had taken a Chinook helicopter, dropped a massive vehicle, rolled it over for maybe a few hundred yards, and then just disappeared again. So that
Oh,
was really strong evidence of an attack.
wow, man. Does,
Mhm.
does does he remember being on the craft or anything like that? Does he have any
No,
memories of?
no, he doesn't remember being on this craft. He just remembers being unconscious and waking up and feeling knowing the dog was right next to him. If I can remember as well, I think he was quite disorientated. I think he had maybe a bit of a headache as well. So he went down to hospital, got checked out. He actually didn't stay all the way, got sick of actually having to wait in the hospital and walked away. Uh, but yeah, that was his account. But apart from that, Malcolm Robertson, who is probably the most famous Scottish ufologist, has found other people that have seen UFOs in and around that same week. And so is a gentleman called Ron Halliday. Ron Halliday's a well-known Scottish UFO researcher. He's found people all through Livingston been reporting hearing or seeing UFOs a week before that happened. And even to this day, I'm still picking up reports. I got a report of a Polish security guard who saw a UFO at night. So it's not just one person. There's many people have seen UFOs in and around that area. And just
Interesting.
to let you know, Tommy, as well, nearby is a train station called Livingston North, and I saw a UFO this year just over and above that train station.
Whoa, that was you
Yeah,
yourself.
that was myself. Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
describe what you saw?
Of course, now it's not. I think anybody who's seen UFOs and seen them regularly there's sometimes they're like, whoa, that's quite close, or other times like, okay, it's not as spectacular. So it wasn't a spectacular sighting, but it was a golden ball, and it just flew right over my head. And again, it's hard to determine the size and the speed of it because it was just a perfectly clear night and it just flew over my head. Now, what I do remember, it was January the 1st, and it was about maybe 10 o'clock at night. And it was one of the few times, and I know it's a bit of a cop out, guy, so I'm putting my hands up to it, but I genuinely didn't have my phone on me, which is really, really rare. There was no wind, but it kind of just flew over anyway. There was no noise, there was no sound, and it definitely didn't look like a UFO. Sorry, like a conventional craft. Just before that as well, I did see like another golden light, almost like the way you see a satellite, sorry, but instead of it being like that kind of blue color, it was gold. And then about 10 minutes later, saw that golden ball of light. If I was to estimate, I would probably say, although it's a perfect estimation, I would say maybe 400 or 500 feet up in the air and maybe about the same size of a beach ball.
Whoa,
Yeah.
interesting, man. What are your thoughts on? I know it's a difficult question, but what are your thoughts on what these UFOs are?
My thoughts are that maybe based in two categories. Now, I would like to think I've seen a lot and probably seen a lot more than more than a lot of people, but that doesn't mean I know anything. It's, I'd like to say, oh, I've got all these answers and tell me I know nothing. I really don't know anything. The things I've seen, I've always think there've never been anything that's going to be a physical object. They've always been like maybe what you call as plasma or lights or things like that. They've never been like a solid UFO. So my take on it is that I'm probably seeing what most people see when they're seeing UFOs, maybe plasmas or lights or unusual lights. But I do think that there's another category, and that's maybe like the physical objects, and that's maybe the things that people like in the US Congress are talking about, like the Tic Tacs or the actual aliens or things like Roswell. So I think there's actually two categories, maybe things that are genuinely alien
Hmm.
and things that are maybe things to do with almost, I don't know if they're earth anomalies or they're some sort of, I don't know what they are, but I think the more common category is the things that I've seen, basically.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of because I've seen strange things in the sky that I can't explain, and I think
Mhm.
there's a lot of different things going on.
Yeah,
There might not be just one answer to this UFO. You know, what is going on? There could be many different things that we kind of put in the same category. That's just
yeah,
where I am with it. It is
yeah.
interesting, man. Once you see something like that, it's like it changes the world. Like it changes
Oh,
everything.
yeah. Yeah, it's like it literally is life changing, but I think for the most part it's positive.
Hmm.
Like it's no longer this sort of thing where you're this is it, this is all it's going to be. It's like there's not now there's a whole universe of exploration. And for me, one thing I'm really keen on and one common denominator I quite like is things like ley lines.
Hmm.
And then you see things like standing stones in like England and Scotland. And it seems like the ancients had this knowledge about ley lines that have lost. And for me, all of a sudden, there's this sort of mystery about the country that we live in. And it's magic. It's
Hmm.
all of a sudden, you don't have to go to Peru, you don't have to go to Tibet. You can literally go maybe 5 miles in probably any direction, and there's, a holy well or a standing stone, and there's something miraculous associated with it. And actually trying to rediscover the magic is an adventure in itself. So
Hmm.
whether or not the ley lines are a total common denominator, I don't think they are, but I think they do explain a lot. I think they give us an element of magic and mystery to our lives and to our country that we wouldn't have otherwise.
Hmm. Absolutely. I've been to Edinburgh, and I have to
Yeah,
say it's probably the most beautiful place I've ever been to. It
yeah,
is stunning. Every corner you look is like it's like a scene from Harry Potter. Like
yeah.
it just look it's unreal. I knew it was going to be good, but when I got
Mhm.
there, I was like, wow, like and it is like a magical feeling there. There is
Yeah.
like a vibe of high strangeness. I know there's a lot of, as you say, a lot of paranormal that happens there, and you got the underground tunnels and stuff like that, and it's
Oh, yeah.
fascinating and beautiful as well.
Yeah. The Edinburgh. like the vaults are literally really are the real deal.
Yeah.
So I actually know tour guides that work there, and they'll actually sometimes happen that's paranormal, and the guests will say, "Oh, you've set that up," and they're like, "No, we really haven't. We really did not set it up. There's been things that have genuinely happened." So, and it's not just been one tour guide. It's been about two or three people that I've known that work there, and they've all said the same thing that these things are really happening. That really is as paranormally active as they say. So the vaults are a big place, and then there's also Greyfriars Kirk, and that's it's meant to be like a ghost there that people are well known about, and there's supposed to be thousands of sightings. One thing I really like about Greyfriars Kirk. Now I have been there with psychics, and they have picked stuff up. But what's really interesting about the Kirk itself is that that seems to be where J.K. Rowling has actually got all the inspiration for all her characters. So McGonagall is actually there's actually William McGonagall. So like if you ever see like Professor McGonagall in Harry Potter, there's a McGonagall, there's a Snape, there's a Potter, there's all these people seem to have actually been buried there. And William McGonagall was a poet from Dundee, and he was actually dubbed the world's worst poet. He was absolutely terrible, but he's actually buried in Greyfriars Kirk. So whenever you go on the tours there into Edinburgh, they'll always say, "Oh yeah, this is where J.K. Rowling got her inspiration from."
Yeah.
But these places aren't actually the most interesting place in Edinburgh to me. Now, there's lots and lots of interesting places, and I've got to admit, I probably don't know as much as I should. But the one place that really stands out is a place called Gilmerton Cove, and Gilmerton's a kind of a kind of an estate in Edinburgh. It's kind of at the east side of Edinburgh, and you would drive past it, and you genuinely would not know it's there, Tommy. You would drive past and you would see a kebab shop, a chemist, a hairdresser, all the other things. There's one little shop that's actually got underground tunnels, and it's actually called Gilmerton Cove. And nobody knows how these it's like basically carved into hollowed out um, like rooms that have been made, and nobody knows how they've been made. It's really bizarre. Now, I've been there twice on paranormal investigations, and the first time, do you know, you maybe get like clairvoyance where you can see things, or clairaudience where you can hear things.
Hmm.
I had like clairolfactance, which was the only time I've ever had it, and I could smell a distinctive smell of alcohol. There's a belief that this was actually owned by the health club or used by the Hellfire Club at one point, so like for drinking and nonsense and all that. But what really it was just phenomenal was there was a woman there who now she was a very educated woman, and all of a sudden almost like she seemed being taken over by something. She was growling, she was like showing teeth the way a dog would be.
Hmm.
It was actually quite scary actually just to see this change in this woman. And when we and then she's like snapped out of it and she had no recollection of actually being in that state. So of all the places that I've been in Edinburgh, the place that's been by far the most active for me is Gilmert Cove. It's just off the charts.
Interesting.
It's not well known about, and certainly it's not on the like on the beaten path for sure. It's right out there in the suburbs, but for sure it's very, very interesting.
Wow. Well, as you say, there's so much stuff on our doorstep that we often
Yeah,
don't know about. Like I learn stuff about the area that I live in, and you're like, wow, like how did I not know that? That's incredible. I'm
yeah.
hearing these stories from all around the world, and then here on my doorstep, there's this incredible legend, and it's like, wow, that's wild though that you actually heard. And do you say you smelt the smell of alcohol? Just
I actually smelled it like somebody had been drinking right next to me. It was,
whoa.
it was there's only, sorry, twice I've actually had that. The second time was when my grandfather died, and I was in a house 30 miles away from where my grandfather died, and I got that smell of pipe. Like, you know, like old, like our grandfather's generation would smoke a pipe, and it's quite an unmistakable smell, and it just came right through. And there's no way, 'cause I don't smoke, my wife doesn't smoke, and it just came through. And I was like, almost like to say
Whoa.
that's it. So the only two times I've ever had it was when A, my grandfather died, and B, when I was in Gilmerton Cove.
Interesting, man. Yeah, I quite often, it's not happened for a while, but I used to quite often smell my both my granddads like aftershave. And
Yeah,
I'd be like, just out of nowhere, and you'd be like, why am I smelling that now?
yeah.
Yeah, it's wild because you're often not even thinking about anything like to
Mhm.
do with your granddads or anything, and that smell just comes up. It's like their smell. It's interesting, man.
It's definitely, and the one thing as well is that I don't think, like, say for example, you can mishear or you can missee, but you can't really miss-smell.
True. Yeah, that's so
It's
true. Yeah.
yeah, there's something very distinctive about smell that it's not something you tend to make mistakes on. If
Hmm.
somebody's got a certain smell or something like that, you tend to know that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, for a smell to sort of, I know we have senses and people have different levels of smell, I guess, but you to be sitting there and suddenly smell something that you're like sort of, oh, grabs your attention. As you say, that's not something that you can manifest, I don't think, you know?
No, I genuinely don't know how to manifest a smell.
Yeah.
Well, I do, but not that smell.
Yeah, that smell, that's it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I would love to go to like the start of your paranormal experiences. What got you into these high strangeness subjects in the first place? Where does it begin for you?
Well, I'm originally from a town called Dundee, so a city called Dundee, and Dundee's on the east coast of Scotland, and it's the fourth biggest city. There's always a thing about the four major cities, and Dundee is the fourth of those major cities, but also the smallest one. And it's almost on the coast of the North Sea. It's not quite. It's on the estuary of the River Tay, and the River Tay is the longest river in Scotland, but the biggest output in terms of water volume in the UK. And when I was six, I remember. So basically, to long story short, I lived in a haunted house, and throughout my life, it was always haunted. There's lots of things happening. But at six, I remember all the doing the basic things. Tell me where you have a dream, and the next day you remember what from your dream something coming true, and that happened more and more. And I remember being scared of certain parts of the house, but not really thinking too much about it. I was just thinking I was an overactive imagination, thinking of like I remember even being six or seven, just being kind of scared of certain places and running away and nothing. But that was just at that age. And then when it really started for me was about 11 years old, and it was a Monday night for sure. I can't remember. It was in December time, like winter time for sure. And I used to have a dog called Clyde, and Clyde I had to take him out just before I went out to a table tennis club. And it was maybe about 6 o'clock at night. It was dark. I saw a flash of white light in the sky, and then it was almost like somebody taking a photograph with a flash on, but instead of it being bluish, it was kind of a whitish flash as well, but right in the sky. And then I saw another bright flash, and then this circle, it was like a flat, saucer-like uh, ball, not ball of light, but saucer-like light. So like almost like like when we say plasma, but in a very flat saucer-like this shape sort of size. And then it went right over my neighbour's house. And what I remember was that there was no noise, and it was literally just across the street. So if you ever go out, people, and you see, just look right at your neighbour's house, and just imagine being right over your neighbour's house and look up 10 feet, and that's just where the object was, or the plasma was. That's all it was. There was nothing to it. And it was dancing. It was not like dancing, but it was just like moving about really quickly. It wasn't like staying exactly still. It kept just seemed to be kind of dotting about in maybe an area maybe about 4 meters or something like that. As it was moving around, light from it would actually reflect off my neighbour's house. They had a white house, so it would reflect quite easily off my neighbour's house. And I remember just seeing it for maybe, I don't know, I don't really know the exact time, but say maybe 5 minutes. And I walked in and I had a family friend. We'd always call each other like cousins. She said, come out and look at this. And we looked at it for another 5 minutes. I thought, you know what? That's time up. I'm getting a bit bored now looking at the the flag, the UFO. That's enough. And I remember having this feeling to tell him, I don't think we should tell people this. And that was it. So we went back in, went to play table tennis at night, and then when we were coming back home, I saw like almost like a shooting star, almost like you've seen a Steven Spielberg movie or E.T. or Indiana Jones, where the shooting star would go past, and that was it, and that was the first time I saw a UFO. Then the year later, I went to France, and this is a silly analogy, so I'm going to add this, Tommy, but it's up to you if you really want to put it or not. But what I think is really interesting about this, I genuinely believe I saw an angel, although it could be rationalized, and anybody who's a skeptic would say, like, just that's not an angel, you're just being silly. But I'll put the story in just out of complete honesty and see what you think. So I was 12 years old and went on a school trip. So this is maybe about 9 months or something like that, or just months after that UFO trip, that UFO encounter. And I remember we were driving around in a bus. We went to a few places in France. And I remember it was like a theme park. It wasn't anything as spectacular as Alton Towers or Thorpe Park, but it was maybe a smaller, lower end theme park. And then when I came back on the bus, I couldn't find my wallet. I just didn't have a clue where it was. I had this strong feeling, you need to find your wallet, you need to find it. And we drove on the bus to Bologna, which is quite close to Cali. And I still had this feeling. And then when we got to the city, my teacher said, there's a lot of pickpockets around here, just be on your guard because people might try to take your wallet or anything like that. And I felt I need to get out. I need to get out. If I get out, I'll find my wallet. And my teacher, because I had no money, my teacher actually lent me some money. And I walked down and I kept on walking. I just noticed this old lady locking eyes on me. And this town was packed. It was absolutely packed with people. There was thousands of people walking about. And in France, and she went, I believe this is yours, and handed me the wallet with all the money. And now everybody believes that angels are meant to be like things like with halos and wings. But there's a book called Seeing Angels. I can't remember the lady's name who wrote it. But what she actually said was most angelic encounters actually seem to be like older people who come in times of need and just disappear afterwards. And that's exactly what happened. So, and the fact that there was so many people there and I was lost so far away, for her to hand it to me and to even to speak in English, and it was my dad's wallet, it wasn't my wallet. So it would look like you'd want to hand it to an adult, not to a child. But she knew exactly just to hand it to me. So I found that amazing.
It's
And
incredible,
then,
man.
yeah, and then there's loads and loads of stories after that. It got just busier after a while, but that really got me in the path.
Did you what so once the lady handed you the wallet, did you see her disappear or did she just walk away?
No, not like Star Trek, like beam me up. What?
Hmm.
And again, this was actually over 30 years ago. So it's about 33 years ago, so it was a long time. But from what I remember I remember being really grateful to the lady, and if memory serves, it was almost like whatever. I was trying to say, look, thank you, really appreciate it. And she's like, oh. And then I kind of looked away, and when I tried to look back to see where she was, I couldn't see her. So
Whoa.
yeah, so it wasn't like Star Trek, but I maybe looked away and never really realized the gravity of what actually happened. It took me a long time to realize the gravity of what happened, but when I look back, I realized I couldn't see the lady anymore.
That gave me goosebumps, man.
Yeah, it's an
Wow.
incredible story,
So,
and
because
that sorry,
if you had lost the wallet, like you had a feeling that you'd lost the wallet wherever you was going, it would be where you had just been, wouldn't it? You would,
yeah,
That's incredible, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
I also think that that story gives me a lot of hope because,
Yeah.
like, all of a sudden we're talking about aliens that are can be malevolent or something like that, or and then this story is something where something paranormal was really good and kind and compassionate. So it gives me a lot of hope about like what's going to happen after death, our lives and all that. So it's a really it's for a small thing like being handed back a wallet. It's given me a profound sense of optimism in life.
Mhm.
So I'm still deeply grateful to whatever it was, or if it was
Yeah.
just even a human, even these many years later.
That's incredible, man. I know it was a long time ago, but do you know if your teachers kind of did they hear that story when you was there, or did you tell anyone else?
No, I didn't. The I remember. I'll tell. I remember this. I've never told anybody this, and I probably should have done by now. But what I did is, as soon as I got the wallet, I bought a gorilla, and the gorilla had a little balloon in it. So when you squeeze it, it looked like a penis coming out. And I thought, and then I thought, like, actually, no, I feel really guilty. So I threw it in the bin, and I didn't even think about it. I genuinely just thought this old lady giving me the money back, and I gave the money that my teacher gave to me back to him. But I didn't think, oh, this was an angel or this was something supernatural. And I was on my own at the time. There's nobody else around me as well. I was just by myself. So no, nobody knew about it. None of the teachers knew about it. It was just me. So yeah, and it must have taken a few years for me to actually realize how profound that was. So no, I
Hmm.
was just a bit too ignorant to understand how what actually happened.
Yeah. I get that though. I think obviously as you get older, you look back on
Mhm.
things that were obviously profound at the time. But obviously, the older you get, the more knowledge you have. You think, actually, what that is, I thought it was crazy, but that really was
Yeah,
like crazy. The older you get, the more like you sort of appreciate that experience.
yeah. Tommy, can you just be 1 second, please? I'm just
Yeah,
gonna
of
have to
course,
nip.
man.
Yeah,
No
thank you.
problem. I'll just pause. Okay, we're back. So you had that incredible experience with
Yes,
a possible angel. I mean, that sounds
yes.
very angelic. It was a positive experience. What happened after that, man? What was the next big thing?
Well, it was weird because there was nothing like super spectacular for another 4 years, but there's all these small things that happened over and above that. And I turned 13, and there was lots and lots of weird things happening in the house, and there was almost on a daily, if not a weekly basis. And the one thing that was always common was hammering. And I remember even maybe being about 13 or 14, being on the house by myself, and you'd always have this distinctive hammering. It was it was so common. There was one thing that happened. I only realised maybe a year or so ago how bizarre it was. But I was again 13, 14, and I had a Sega Mega Drive, which we probably all had at that time. I was playing Sonic the Hedgehog, and the character kind of took a life of its own and just started doing things that was not exactly what it was programmed to do. It was almost like it just looked at me like now, the way that if anybody's never played Sonic the Hedgehog, if you haven't moved anything in about 10 seconds, it looks at you deliberately. But this, I was actually playing it, it stopped, and it kind of, I can't remember exactly how it looked, but it just looked at me in a different way, and then jumped off screen, and then stayed off screen for about 2 minutes and jumped back, and then nothing went, and just went back to normal. And there was all these hammerings, there was a lots of footsteps in the house when it was just me or there was nobody else in the house. And then there was this really unusual screaming. And I just remember my other family members had other experiences in the house as well. It wasn't just me. Uh, one of my other family members woke up to find like an old lady just standing over her one time. And yeah, the footsteps were happening. And then there's these screams. Now these were like really loud, like they're not human screams. Just and they only happened twice, but they were quite unsettling and they really upset my family members. So even to this day, two of my family members will not be in a house by themselves, any house at all. they will not be in a house by themselves. They're still quite traumatized by what happened. Yeah, and yeah. So we'll continue what happened after that. Because then it got really crazy. So again, it was just things that happen on a daily or a weekly basis, and then there's those incidents I spoke about then. And then I turned 17 in 1996, and I went. I was taking the same dog, Clyde, out, and where we lived was this what was called the field. It's like a wasteland basically. It used to be a football pitch, but hadn't been used in 100 years. And it's overgrown, and there's trees there, and all the kids went to play, and it's not used for anything else. I took the dog around for a walk, and I saw. Imagine you were in a campfire, and gently we had the smoke that rises up. Imagine the smoke just stopped someplace and just came into a cloud, maybe 15, 20 feet above the ground, and then starts moving about really erratically. And it was moving around really erratically, like the UFO I first saw back in 1991. But way to describe it was almost like, if you ever seen The Predator, the
Hmm.
movie with there was like, it was cloaked, but you can kind of, when it moved, you had that kind of shimmering effect. It was doing exactly the same thing. And it didn't seem to notice me. And I just kind of walked past it and observed it for about 30 seconds, and then walked back and went to my house. Nothing happened. Then the second night, the same thing happened. The shimmering was over, and it was that kind of cloaked whatever it was doing the same thing at the exact same spot, and it recognized me, and it knew that I'd seen it, and it started to follow me down the street. And as it followed me down the street, there was a couple of houses that had, the security cameras. They had the infrared motion sensor, so if you walk close to it, it would set the lights off. So as it was going down, lights were going off, on and off, all over the street, and it was changing shape. And there was not like beams of light like a laser, but almost like a spotlight was almost being like, imagine like you had a big curtain, you just open the spotlight up and then closing it exactly like that as it was following me down. And then it got to the exact same spot where the first UFO I saw. And it changed from this like partially cloaked whatever to a number of very small, like the saucer things, but very, very small, and made a ring of these saucer things. And then the ring started to expand, and it started to contract. And I was just by myself in the house. So I ran into the house. I actually got quite scared, Tommy. I'm not going to lie. And then I thought, no, I need to go out. So I went back, and they were still there, and they expanded again. And as soon as they expanded, I just ran back in, and I felt so incredibly vulnerable just being next to this thing. So anyway, I went to bed that night, and I didn't sleep. I was just so anxious about what had happened. And then, as I was saying before about the security lights going on and off as it was following me down the street, my neighbour's security light went on and off for about the next 3 or 4 days. And I was just so stressed by knowing that that thing was right there. Nobody could see, I couldn't see it by then. It was like fully invisible. I couldn't see anything, but I just knew it was there because the security light went on and off. It was so, so terrifying. So that was probably the second biggest encounter.
What
So yeah.
what do you think that was?
I don't know. Again, I don't think it's a solid craft, and the best thing I can describe it would be a plasma. But I'm just guessing by saying plasma. I'm just assuming that that's what it is. I really don't know. I don't have any explanation of what it was, and but the fact that it could change shape was interesting. But what's really interesting to me is the fact that the security lights were going off, because it means that it was giving an infrared signature. There
Hmm.
must have been heat behind it. So there was energy behind it as well. And that's part of what I'm looking at in my research just now. But that that was interesting. And the fact that it lasted there for so long for a number of days was really scary. So
Man.
yeah, because like every time you had to walk the dog, you'd have to go past his neighbour's house. and you just knew that thing was right there. It was really daunting. It was really, really scary.
So could you still feel like the energy of it, like even after you couldn't see it anymore, but you could still feel it as well? Would you
No,
say?
no, there wasn't a feeling. I have had that, and I had that later on, but those times I didn't have any feelings. It was just the only reason I knew it was there was that that neighbour's light was going on and off. So just like switch on, switch off. But I was doing it constantly for days. They must have thought that their systems were broken, but it's not. It was actually having a UFO right next to their house. I was just hovering over that house for days.
Whoa. So do you think it's kind of it's watching you, possibly experimenting? What do you think? I know it's difficult, but what do you think it was
Yeah.
to do?
I don't think it was experimenting. I don't think there was any experimenting, but they were. I think they knew that they were interfering with the electrical systems and switching the lights on and off. So I think they were just trying to let me know that they were there, and that's what they're trying to do.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've got to admit, it's I haven't thought about too much of why they were doing it. I just knew they were there and they were making their presence known, and that's
That's
exactly what they're doing.
terrifying. So I mean,
Oh, it was
you're
really scary.
17 years old. I know you're a little bit older, but you're still a kid when you're 17. You're still
Yeah,
very young. You still don't really understand the world. Like, I'm not saying every 17-year-old doesn't understand the world, but I certainly didn't. At 17, I would not have been able to fully understand what was going on. It would have,
yeah.
man, that's wild.
It was pretty scary. And
Hmm.
then actually, then it kind of calmed down. One thing is I've thought about is I think they knew I was scared. I think there's some sort of I don't quite understand it, but I think there's some sort of connection. And in 97, 98, they came back and but it wasn't as close as what they were before. They always kept a distance. So all of them always saw them from a distance. And what they would do is they would they would take one part of the sky and almost like imagine you had like a white sheet of paper. Well, you just had that kind of that plasma energy or whatever it is, and just put a sheet of this stuff right in right over one side. It was always like like the kind of the southern part of the sky, and it would just like kind of like make a wave like energy. And they did that for like a number of days. I think it happened for over almost 2 weeks at one point, or almost every day. I would see this. And what's weird is that where I live is quite close to the football stadiums. Dundee is quite unusual and it's got the two closest football stadiums in the UK and two of the closest in the world. They're only about a 2 minute walk from each other. So this is a really built up area. Everybody should have been seeing them, especially over a number of nights, but nobody else saw them. And yeah, I just remember these kind of this wave-like pattern would happen. There was there night after night, night after night. And it happened 97, 98. And then 99 was when it got crazy. It got really crazy. So this was the what you're talking about, having that feeling. I call it the knowing. And as a kind of a joke to kind of let other people understand it, it's not quite the same feeling, but it's the only way I can to describe it is imagine you've been out to the pub and you're pissed, but you told your wife you're going to be back at 8 and it's now 2 o'clock in the morning and
Oh,
you know you're going to be in trouble. You know there's going to be questions.
been there.
Well, yeah. That's what I call the knowing. You just know there's something there. And as you know you're going about where have you been? You just know that thing was there. So again, it was that wasteland where I was close to my parents' house. I've taken the dog out again, and I just felt I know there's something there. I know that something is is just waiting. I need to go there. I know it's there. And when I went in, and again, it's a wasteland that's quite big. It used to be an old football stadium, so you can imagine it's not a small. bit of ground. But apart from that, the rest of it's a really built up area. Lots of houses, factories. Nobody saw a thing. Nobody reported anything. And it wasn't a UFO. It was reality itself changed. It was the most frightening experience I've ever had in my life, ever. And what actually happened was the sky quite quickly moved from one part of it moved to a kind of a purplish blue. So say for example, I was facing west. So as I faced westward, part of the sky turned a bluish purple color. Then the other part of the sky turned a reddish pink. And then there's kind of like a bright white light just shot between them, shot between the two parts. And it was almost like, like a searchlight,
Hmm.
but you could see that the strong beams going right through it. And then the clouds started to speed up. And that was the bit that really frightened me. It just felt so incredibly vulnerable. And I must have been out there for a good 5 minutes. But and I tried to call somebody, and nobody would answer. I had one of those mobile phones at the time in the late 90s where like the phone could double up as a brick in an emergency.
Yeah.
And it was the clouds started moving really quickly. So imagine being on YouTube and watching something about the weather and then putting it on maybe 10 times the speed and see the clouds move quickly. That's exactly what happened.
Whoa.
And it was when the clouds started moving, I thought, I'm too vulnerable. I have no I know I have no way to defend myself. And then that fear led to just a profound sense of just sheer vulnerability. I've never felt as vulnerable like that ever in my life. And I had to leave. I just had to leave. I could not keep the strength, the bravery to stay there. I had to run away. And as soon as I walked out that wasteland, I got a message, like a telepathic message saying, "You were not meant to leave." And then I felt really bad, so I went back in. But whatever connection or whatever it was, I'd broken the connection. I never came back.
Whoa.
So that was the most intense experience I've ever had in the paranormal.
Man, obviously we don't know, but had you have stayed there, what do you think would have happened? I mean, I know that's we don't know that, but what are your thoughts? What's your gut feeling on the?
Well, to be honest, Tommy, I really don't know. But if I was to guess, I think it was it was like reality was melting. So if you ever watched The Matrix and do you think if you've ever seen where Keanu Reeves like touches the mirror and it just melts,
Hmm.
that's how I that's how I kind of felt. I felt like everything had dissolving around me. It felt just so disconcerting. I think they would have upped the ante. I think they would have made it even more bizarre, and maybe something would have happened. But whatever happened, I don't know. I really couldn't give you a strong answer. I only knew at that point that I had reached the limits of how much I could tolerate, and I had to leave. And not that I've been had an adventurous life or done anything dangerous, but once or twice when there's something bad happen, like car accident, I've still never been as scared as that moment. Yeah.
I mean, do you think you was getting a glimpse into like an alternate reality, or a glitch in the matrix? What do you think it?
No, what I think is, and I don't quite understand this, but I think when you have an experience like that, you're no longer in our universe. I think what's happening is that do you know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about Schrodinger's cat?
No, I'm not
Right. So
sure.
Schroding, so it breaks down into like so again. I'm not a quantum physicist, so if I'm talking about quantum physicists and pretending that I'm an expert, I really don't mean to. But it's the only way I can describe it is doing the double slit experiment where they didn't know whether light's a particle or a wave. Well, Schrodinger broke it into when quantum physics became a thing. famous experiment was Schrodinger's cat. And essentially, what happens is that you put a cat in a box and you seal it, and you put poison into this box. And basically, what you're giving the cat a 50-50 chance of living. And in that, until you open that box, it's kind of encapsulated in its own little micro universe. And when you open it up, you can see whether the cat's alive or dead. But in that moment, it's both alive and dead until you open up the box. And that's how I think it's happening. I think that when you go into this thing, you're kind of going to almost like a small kind of encapsulated universe, you and the phenomenon. And that's why other people aren't able to see it. Now, this actually this isn't actually something that's just theoretical. This is provable. So nowadays we have things called quantum computing, and quantum computing bases is actually its power comes from something called superposition, which is in that time where, oh, and it was almost like an MRI machine where you put all the photons into this really intense state, and in that state, um, everything's either a one or it's not just one or a zero, but one and zero and everything in between. And then when it collapses, then you can get it goes back into zero or one. But in that state, you're in both states at both times. And I kind of feel if there's any form of explanation, it's sort of like that. Is that you're no longer you're in a kind of encapsulated small universe with you and the phenomenon. Uh, that's the best way I can describe it. Although, again, I'm not a quantum physicist, and I am probably doing a terrible job at
No,
describing it.
not at all,
But
man.
that's the
No.
way. That's the way I understand it.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
interesting. And that kind of telepathic voice that you heard saying you shouldn't have left. I mean, any idea what that is? Do you think
No,
that's?
it was actually more of a. I'm also probably not doing it a service by calling it a voice. It's almost like imagine imagine you go into a shop when you're 5 years old and you see like a sweet and you pick up a sweet and you steal it and you look at your mother and your mother looks at you and looks at you like you shouldn't have done that. And you know the feeling you get in from the way that she looks at you as that was wrong. I should not have done that.
Hmm.
It's that feeling that I got that made me realize that I shouldn't have done it. So
Wow.
it wasn't a telepathic, it wasn't, so I'm probably misspeaking, I'm sorry. But it was almost like that was the feeling, it was like the feeling, but it's almost not just a feeling, it's almost like you shouldn't have
Hmm.
done that.
Yeah,
That's exactly how it felt.
it's a knowing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Which
Mm.
is quite often like with like psychics and all sorts of different people. They'll say, "I just know." I don't know
Yes.
how I
Yeah.
know, but it's just a knowing.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Wow.
that was the most intense experience I've ever had with the paranormal. There's been many more,
Hmm.
but that was by far the most intense.
Wow, man. Wow. I want to go back just briefly to your Sonic experience because I'm a
Yeah.
big game geek and
Okay.
I've actually heard that before where people have been playing a game and they've seen a character like come out of character basically and
Yeah.
and do something that shouldn't be a part of the game. And in today's world, with gaming today, you could kind of understand it because we're online. They can
Yeah.
update games whenever they want, and they do. They change things on games every day. They can do that now, but back then, in the 90s, we had the game. We had the not a disc. What would you call it? You had the
It is a cassette. It was
we
like
had the
almost like
cassette. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that we put in, and that's all we had. There was
Yeah.
no downloads. The game was
No.
there. Good times.
Yeah.
But like, how can you explain that, man? That's so wild.
I can't. And it's one of these things that was so bizarre. I've only recently spoken about it because it, I always feel that when you're speaking about these things, there's a fine line between actually sounding like a total whack job and actually telling the truth.
Hmm.
And sometimes the only way to tell the truth is to sound like a whack job.
Hmm.
And that's how I feel when I say that. And again, this was probably about 92, 93, maybe, no, it wasn't 94, maybe 94, but I don't think it was. I think it was 92, 93. And it's so long ago. Like a lot of people who actually even listened to your show wouldn't have been alive at that time. And if they could be in their 30s as well. It's such a long time. So I just remember, so I can't remember the exact specifics what I did, but do you remember the Spring Hill Zone? It was the third level on
Hmm.
Sonic 1. And there were lots of like almost like hills. So Sonic would you get it to tumble really quickly, or you can get to run, and it stopped in the middle of the hill. It kind of just looked at me, and I did a gesture. I can't remember exactly what the gesture was, but I remember doing a gesture, and it wasn't anything. And then it just jumped right off the screen. So I remember that I just jumped off the screen and it just disappeared. And it was like that for minutes. And minutes is a long time when you're playing a game, and then it
Absolutely.
just fell, it just came back, and I was like back to normal.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was that's all I can remember of it really.
Hmm.
There was also another case, sorry, I forgot about this. And that is another thing that I haven't spoken about until only a few years ago. But there was an there was one time where I saw it looked like I saw my dad. I was just over the gates from the house and had my dad's coat, haircut, everything. And I turned round and just black eyes. And again, I've spoken about it a few times now, but it was it was just crazy. It just lasted for a moment or two, and but it definitely happened. And I just remember just seeing it, and then and I can't remember what happened afterwards. I actually I think I walked. I don't know what happened actually, but I just remember seeing this thing with there was just like black eyes or no eyes, like there was nothing there,
Hmm.
and that must have been about 95 or something like that. So we're talking 30 odd years ago. But all these things they tended to happen between 11 and 22. These would, and between 11 and 19, so the teenage years, that's when it was at its peak.
I mean, you hear the
Yeah.
black-eyed entities. You hear, like, obviously, you've got
Yeah.
the black-eyed children, but
Yeah.
I've talked to a number of people that seen adults with seemingly
Mhm.
black eyes,
Yeah.
and that's terrifying, man. So that clearly wasn't your dad. That was,
It wasn't my dad.
yeah.
Do you know the funny thing is it wasn't terrifying at the time.
Hmm.
Um, it was it was something I couldn't process it. I know it seems silly, but a lot of these times when like the hammering, for example, or the there's so many a lot of the it happened so often that you kind of thought, oh, so or B, it was so bizarre that your body can't, your mind cannot process these things.
Hmm.
Um, it's really bizarre.
Hmm.
So I wasn't frightened, and it kind of I think if I had gone past the gate, I think I would have been frightened then. But I think the fact that it kept to just beyond the gate meant that I was felt probably didn't feel frightened, but if I was in the garden and if I was in the house especially, I'd have been terrified. But it kind of kept to that distance where it wasn't actually a threat.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was going back. So I'm not like traumatized by it or scared by the experience, but I am. I found it bizarre, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely, man.
yeah,
It sounds like there was a lot going on, and it almost seems like you had something there that was trying to change your perception of reality and show you these things. And it's like you're having these moments where you're playing your game, and then all of a sudden
yeah.
the character like glitches out. I mean, it sounds like there's something that's trying to sort of you know um, show you something, or you know, I, I, I don't know, it's your experience, but you know what I'm saying? It's like it's trying
Yeah,
to change your perception, of reality around you.
it could be. The thing is that I'm probably not, probably uh, wasn't wasn't able to listen to it. I'm probably not clever enough to actually figure out what it was trying to teach me. If I'm honest with you, what I was saying before was I do feel that it's giving me perspective, which I feel really blessed at. In that I I see the world for being mysterious and magical and wonderful instead
Mhm.
of it seen as mundane, boring, and kind of depressing. And I feel that's a tremendous gift. I don't know if there was any sort of message or something like that. I really don't know. And maybe due to fear or just not being smart enough, but I never really got the what message was trying to teach me, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Hmm.
And I was talking about 97, 98. These things weren't as like when they had those waves of like plasma, like whatever it was. I remember at one point walking into the house and there's those footsteps and there's nobody upstairs. We could hear footsteps from upstairs. And so you walk into the house after seeing not quite a UFO, but mysterious lights, and then walking in and you hear footsteps in the upstairs in the house. So I've always wondered if there's been a connection to it. Like I'm a big fan of things like ley lines, and I
Hmm.
just wondered if there's a ley line there that there's no stone markers or anything like that to actually depict where it is. And I was just lucky enough to see it. But I really couldn't answer that question, Tom. I'm
Hmm.
sorry, I can't answer it.
No, it's cool, man. It's cool. I've experienced, so much myself that I know that
Mm.
there's more going on around us. And I know, like, to someone that's not experienced a lot, sometimes you said whack job, but you don't
Yeah,
sound like a whack. Not to me, brother. And I
yeah, thank
know,
you.
it's you meet a lot of people that say, oh, they don't believe in this kind of stuff. But
Yeah,
quite often they've had some sort of experience as well, but they've just not accepted it.
yeah,
And that's probably why they switch it off. But for guys like us, we're sort of fascinated by it. We
yeah.
believe it and it carries on. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I've seen that before. I've spoken to people who have experienced things like UFOs, paranormal, and the way they've done it, they've rationalized it. They've thought
Hmm.
about it and they've rationalized it. And to be honest, that's all we're trying to do. We can only work by our worldview. And if our worldview does not include things like UFOs or paranormal or anything like that, then that's fine. The one thing you've also got to, I think you've got to respect skeptics to a certain
Hmm.
degree. Where I don't like is the kind of the skeptic where they're like doing the Louis Theroux, where they actually take the mick out of people or make them look like they're silly.
Hmm.
But there's times where skeptics will be asking really decent, normal questions, and sometimes you've just got to say, "Look, I don't know." There's no other way I can say it other than I don't know. This happened to me. This is how I believe I experienced it. Other people have been there. I strongly don't believe it was me processing things that I don't think I think I'm right,
Hmm.
but a lot of the time you've just got to say, look, I don't know. And yeah, I've got more questions than answers. I have very
Yeah.
few answers,
I
but
think
a
that's
lot of
how it is with
questions.
the paranormal.
Definitely.
I don't think there's really many, there is no experts on the paranormal, really. We haven't
No,
got the answers. People have
no,
got great ideas. People spend their lives researching it and they've got
yeah,
really credible ideas. But at the end of the day, no one can prove right or wrong anything really. And the only
absolutely.
real proof we have is having conversations like this where we
Yeah,
share experiences and the more we share, like I'm hearing things that you're telling me tonight that I've heard before from other people.
mhm,
And it's like you put them together, there's so many people that are actually experiencing the same thing.
yeah. And the thing is that I don't really know anybody that's seen like Sonic the Hedgehog change or
Hmm.
um, I genuinely never met people that have seen their father look, but with no eyes. But I've seen people actually seen Nordic beings actually appear on their ceiling of their bedroom. And I 100% believe these people. I've known them
Hmm.
for a long time now. So yeah, it would be nice to meet people that have seen the same things, but it does make you feel a bit alone and feel a bit silly about actually telling these things. But the only way we're going to actually find the truth is actually by kind of having that ability to say, look, I might look stupid, but this is what I know,
Hmm.
and that's what I'm trying to do. But yeah,
Yeah, no, absolutely,
as
man.
well as I can.
I think
Yeah,
I think the crazy people now are people that don't believe in anything. I think for me, they're the ones that are like, how can you not? In the world that we
yeah,
live in, especially today, where it's crazy on the mainstream news is crazy. We know,
yeah,
everything's crazy. Like, how can you not believe that there's actually more going on than just? I know it, because most people that are very skeptical, that are like that they want to be in control. I totally understand because you can't really control high strangeness. Anything can
yeah.
happen really at any time, and people don't like that. And I do get that. It is
Mhm.
scary, but to think that this world is just black and white, what it is, what we see is what we get. It's just not that, man. It's just not that.
Yeah. You've got to see. I've tried to see it from everybody's point of view, and you look at skeptics. You look like people like Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, for example. They make very strong arguments.
Hmm.
What I find though is that a lot of people who say that they're skeptics, they're not. What they're not understanding is they're coming out with their own belief. Like my belief is that there's UFOs. Their belief that there's not. And a lot of the time they'll say something like, "Well, extraordinary claims merit extraordinary evidence." But actually, what they're trying to say is like, well, like, when you actually try to define what extraordinary evidence is to them, it actually becomes a bit of a grey area. Like if you say, right, they need a picture, an absolute clear picture. Well, clear pictures could be done by AI. It could be photoshopped. And even if you had a clear picture, there'll always be people who are saying, well, that's AI or that's a trick or something like that. It's very, very difficult to actually have
Hmm.
something that's provable. And that's what a lot of the stuff I'm looking at for my research is on how we actually get good evidence. But it's hard to actually prove one way or another. The one thing I have found though is I have found them quite close-minded. And I think this comes from not from scientific, but more a reductionist point of view, which is kind of the scientific norm. But what we're starting to see, we are starting to see scientists, especially people like the person that comes to me extremely quickly is Rupert Sheldrake,
Hmm.
and he's phenomenal, and he's actually trying to think outside the box. And now we're starting to see, like, say, for example, the telepathy tapes where people are actually putting experiments out and they're saying, I actually have a severely autistic non-verbal son, by the way. So, yeah, so this is it's very personal. Telepathy tapes are very personal to me.
Hmm.
But we're starting to see, well, there are a small group of scientists, not the mainstream scientific majority, but are starting to think, what if? What if? Where's consciousness coming from? What are these things could be? So I think a scientific reductionist paradigm is not a good way. I think the scientific paradigm should be and always should be using scientific method to kind of not prove something, but suggest that something is out there. I think we're starting to get to the point where we can apply scientific method to the phenomena, and there's ways to do it, and that's what I'm trying to look at.
Hmm. Interesting, man.
Yeah,
Interesting. Well, I'd like to get more into that,
yeah,
but
of course.
before we do, so you had that experience where you saw the sky change,
Yes.
and what kind of happened after that? Is there anything else that stands
Well,
out
it died
after that?
down. It died down. So I was 19. It was 1999, and there it all died down after that. So there wasn't as much the paranormal in the house or any of that all the hammering all stopped. So it went really down. And then 3 years later, again, same dog. So bought the dog in 1990, 2002. Dog's 12 years old, still about, but getting a bit older. Taking the dog again, the same route I was taking when I saw the UFOs and when they followed me. And these, I don't know how many pillars, but just say for, I think it's about 8 or 9 pillars. And there were these pillars of light. And north of Dundee are a group of hills called the Sidlas. And Sid means it's kind of like comes from like a fairy term, though there's not much paranormal activity happening around there. I can certainly talk about some of the stuff I'm looking into, but um, it was kind of right next to these hills, these pillars of light, and they just cut. it was like doing the actual like organ thing where they kind of go up and down. They're just like all expanding and contracting, all at their own, um, all by themselves. They weren't. It didn't seem to be in tandem. They just seemed to be doing it by themselves automatically. And this time, we're like, I am not leaving. I am waiting to. I'm going to be sitting this out, and I was watching them stop and listen to them. And the only time it happened, somebody came over. And it was my dad was driving. My grandmother used to live. My grandmother and grandfather used to live about a mile away from where we our house was, and they had an old Fiat Tempra, and I just saw the Tempra coming down the street and snap, and that was it. They just all disappeared. And I was like, "Hi!" And do you know, I remember just saying to him, "Hang on, you're getting." It's almost like saying you got me into trouble for disappearing, and now my dad's come down and he's and you've disappeared. Like, what the hell was that? And that was it. That was the last time I saw anything in Dundee until 2016. And there's stories about that and why and some I've actually found a lot of stuff about 2016 incident. But
Interesting.
um yeah, it wasn't, and just for record, it wasn't just me that have seen UFOs in that area. I know another two people that have seen UFO, actually three people that have seen UFOs in that area. So, and one person had experiences where the kind of the balls were coming down almost out to ground level and flying around. So it wasn't just me. There was something happening in that level at that time. And 1999 was seemed to be where it was at its peak, and then it
Hmm.
just seemed to calm down. So where my parents live now, there's an occasional thing that happens. I think something happened about 8 years ago where something moved through that out the house and door opened and then like a tin of paint fell over all over the ground. But apart from that, it's very quiet now. Um, I I had an experience in 2016 and then this year in 2025. Apart from that, that's been relatively quiet. Yeah,
Interesting. It is
yeah,
interesting because in so many cases of the paranormal, for
mhm,
whatever reason, like people younger experience a lot of high strangeness, and then for whatever
yeah,
reason, it calms as they get older. That seems to have, not in every case, and sometimes you do talk to people that never have experiences when they're younger, and then all of a sudden they're open to it.
mhm,
So that is interesting how that can be so intense to calming. Do you think that's something to
yeah,
do with yourself switching it off? Because I do think that's a possibility as well.
yeah. Oh, actually, so the 2016 incident, actually, that's what they said. So it's okay to just go into the incident
Yeah,
because
absolutely,
there's
man.
some really interesting things that happened to it. So over above Deckman Woods, which is again, it's about a mile away from where I am, about 3 miles to the south of me is a small reservoir called Harper Rig. Actually, sorry, about maybe 4 miles away from me. Harper Rig is where the second most famous incident happened in Scotland. And there was a guy called two guys were driving along one night and they're driving from Edinburgh to a small town called Tarbrax. Now there's nothing off Tarbrax. Honestly, it's a one street town, one street village, and there's maybe about 5 or 6 houses in it. There's nothing to it. And they drove past this they drove past Harper Rig, which is a reservoir, and there was a like a triangular shaped craft hovering above the hovering above the road and it had a light uh, like shining on the road. And the two guys actually drove into the light. The next minute, they couldn't remember anything. And they actually got to the town of Tarbrax, and they they said the people were like, "Where the hell have you been?" And they were like an hour and a half, 2 hours late. They'd actually had about 2.5 hours missing, or an hour and a half or 2 hours missing time. So SPI, which is probably the biggest and most famous organisation in Scotland, we did a sky watch there, and it was my very first sky watch. And there was a lady called Alison Dunlop that actually organised it. And we there's hills over there. It's called the Pentland Hills, And if you ever been to Edinburgh, you see those like hills in the distance. That's the
Hmm.
hills.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and Alice and I could see that these two hills had this black energy on them, with like really distinct black energy. And the only other time I've ever seen it is at Inverness, near like where Loch Ness is. And I was like, oh, that. And both of us picked it up, and we know one of the witnesses very, very well. So he was able to show us where exactly the incident happened. And I I was quite freaky. It really was a strange place. So after about an hour or two, I got in the car and drove home. I lived in a town called Markinch at the time, and I started getting these really bizarre dreams. And I can actually remember them. Like if you ever have a UFO dream, they're quite disconcerting. They're not like a normal dream. They seem just it's like you don't feel secure. There's that vulnerability comes back. It's really bizarre. And it was almost in the sense there wasn't any words, but the word was like it just had the sense of we thought you'd given up. We'd kind of severed the connection. And a few days later, I went back to Dundee. Markinch is a town in Fife, and it's only about 20 miles away from my hometown, Dundee. So I'd go to Dundee a lot and drove over the bridge to the River Tay. And the next minute, I saw it looked like a flare, just like this orange object, just like fly over, and I expected it to explode like a flare, and never did. It just went to the other side from Dundee to Fife and went over the River Tay. It's a very big estuary. And then I saw another one. I thought somebody must be lighting flares. It might be a ship in distress or something like that. And then all of a sudden, this golden ball, massive gold, it was like a mini sun, just appeared right over the River Tay. And you can actually see the reflection right off the Tay. And I was actually with somebody at the time. And both of us saw it. And we're just watching it for a number of minutes. And then I thought, do you know what? I'm going to drive to, it's a place called Broughty Ferry. It's quite a affluent area of Dundee. It's about a 15-20 minute drive. I thought, if that's there, that's the best place to see it. By the time I got there was nobody there. Now, I put a report on Facebook, nobody's seen anything. But in that time, I've seen several other reports of people seeing golden lights over the water throughout in Dundee. So it's not just me that's seen it,
Hmm.
but yeah. So anyway, what actually happened after that was that we started to get really bizarre synchronicities. Like really, it was like all the time, constant synchronicities to Harper Rig. So I've got a dog, my new dog, Jarvis, who's right here. He's in disgrace. He was barking at a neighbour. Um, it was silly things like we found out when you do the pedigree search,
Hmm.
his grandfather was called Harper Rig. And there's just and then we were looking for a new house. And at that time, it's almost like my psychic ability just ramped up to 1,000%. And I actually went to my wife and I went, "You're pregnant." And she went, "No, I'm not." I went, "No, you're pregnant." And she was. And I just knew that she was there. So we needed to get a house. Our house was too small. And she, and so we're looking around Dundee, Fife, Fife area, and we could not find a house. And the only house that was suitable for us was the house we're in now, which is in Livingston, which is a mile away from Deckermont and a few miles away. And the hills that had the black energy, I see them every single day.
Whoa.
And there's hundreds and hundreds of synchronicities. I've actually lost track of them. But say, for example, a common one was my friend and I tried to walk up those hills and we started from Harper Rig and it was maybe April day, so but it wasn't cold, and there was even wild swimmers in the water. And we tried to get up the hill, and next minute this blizzard just appeared out of nowhere, and then we turned back and it disappeared. Or like I went and showed a friend of mine Harper Rig, and that night, like Malcolm Robertson was on Howard Hughes's TV show talking about the same area, and it'd just be like small things would happen over and over again. And the only time it actually stopped is I went with a phenomenal psychic, a guy called Ian Shanes, and he's the best psychic I've ever met. And I remember seeing something, and there's a small river. It's where the Water of Leaf starts. The Water of Leaf is a small river. It's not a big one by any stretch, but it goes right through Edinburgh. And it starts off almost at Harper Rig. And I saw something in the water, and Ian said, "No, you saw something," and spoke to it. Ever since then, all the synchronicities have stopped. But I'm still finding out things about the area. Just about 2 weeks ago, I posted on UFO Scotland. I found that the Knights Templar used to own that area. There's actually a hill called Templar Hill. I found
Whoa.
myself and a researcher found that the Knights Templar used to own it. So there's thousands of years of history there,
Mhm.
and we're just digging into it more and more and more, just in that one area.
Wow, man.
Yeah,
I mean, with the synchronicities, some people say, "Oh, it's coincidence and stuff like that." I don't believe in coincidences anymore
yeah,
because there's far too many. And as you say, when it's happening so regularly, it's like, no, there's something going on here, man. That's
yeah.
wild. So it's like
That was
you
crazy.
saw the light and it kind of started, and then you saw another light and it finished, basically.
No, the night it was like dark energy, but when it
Hmm.
was back in Dundee, it was like the two flare-like objects, and then there was the golden ball, and we're like that for a few minutes, and then we disappeared. Again, I'm probably not the world's bravest person, and I thought, is it getting closer to me? And I was thinking, if it's getting closer to me, I'm probably feeling a bit vulnerable. Actually, that's one of the reasons why I drove off as well. But I did actually go to the area where I'd probably most likely see it. So I'm probably giving myself a bit of a disservice. But that was, yeah, and that until this year when I saw that golden golden orb fly over my head, that's the last time I'd seen anything. But it was quite a uh, significant sighting.
Interesting, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
The black mass that you saw, can you describe what that looked like?
It was almost like a black energy. And it was almost like I remember, like almost like pulsating on the hill. So it's like imagine like a fog
Hmm.
on a hill. Well, imagine that like a black energy kind of like pulsating. That's exactly how it felt. And Alison Dunlop, Alison is a mystic. She's actually married to Ian Shanes, and Alison actually had her guide come in. She's a very strong medium, and she had her guide come in and say, "You need to get out of this area right now," and she did. She absolutely did. So the whatever I've been like as I said before, I live near there, so I've been up there so many times. I've never ever felt that energy. I can see those hills from my windows. I've never seen it again. It's only that one time, but oh my God, it was unmistakable. So Alison actually wrote a book called Mystic Visions, and she actually wrote about the incident that we both saw.
Wow. Man, I mean, I climbed when I was in Edinburgh. What's the name of the big mountain that's in like just outside Edinburgh the famous one where you can climb up and stand at the top?
After Seat,
That's it, Arthur's
yeah,
Seat. Yeah.
I've
I
only ever
cl
done that once.
Really?
Yeah, only
Oh
once.
wow. Man,
Yeah,
yeah, I was there and it was actually on a stag do. But I was
yeah,
like, guys, I'm gonna have to do this. And a few
yeah.
of us went up there and it was amazing, man. The view
Yeah.
incredible.
It
So that
takes ages
must
to go up there.
yeah, man, yeah, it was a
Yeah,
quite a big hike.
yeah,
And we got to the bottom and it was you just starting to rain. It was like, let's get out of here. And we found a pub. But it was beautiful,
yeah,
beautiful, man. I mean, that whole place is beautiful. So
yeah.
you
And
could
there's a lot
see,
of mystery. Yeah, there's a lot of mystery around there as well. There's been small coffins found, like almost like dwarf-like beings found on Attersea. So
really?
this is back in the 19th century. So Edinburgh is it's like a place like York or all those like historic towns. There's mystery underneath mystery, and you could keep on digging and finding, and you'll only get one level, and then you could spend a lifetime looking for stuff, and you probably never find it all.
Mhm.
But Edinburgh's got so much to it.
Yeah, man. Those what little like, what were the bodies like? Do you know what they were like?
I don't know. I think they're just like small skeleton-like beings, and there's another place in Ochills that have got something similar to it,
Hmm.
but I don't know really too much to the story other than the small coffins were found back in the 19th century.
Wow. Because we got
Yeah.
these bodies from these like mummified skeletons from Peru
Yeah.
that
Oh yeah.
some are saying are legit now.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's mixed opinions on them, but some are saying that they are a legit, they are something unknown.
Yeah, the thing is as well is that there seems to be like organized crime, organized gangsters that seem to be running like access to it, and
Hmm.
it seems that some of them seem legit, but others seem to be like like if you give us 100 grand, we'll give you this, and
Yeah,
it'll be a mannequin with a few chicken
that's the
hairs on it or
problem.
something like that.
They're making fakes. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. People,
yeah,
yeah, wherever there's money, people will find a way to corrupt
yeah.
it. Yeah. It is interesting though, because there's
It
some
is,
people
yeah,
that, have got real evidence that there are. I know people describe seeing creatures like this, but we've actually got physical evidence, and we just need the right person to get hold of it, really, to do the
definitely.
real proper research on it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Wild stuff, man. So interesting. So that
Yeah.
so so that 2016 experience was like not the end of your experiences, but then obviously you had that experience quite recently where you saw
Mhm.
a UFO. Is there anything else that's happened that sort of stands out?
I think that's pretty much it. I think there's nothing else. There's maybe been bits and pieces over the years,
Hmm.
but I can't. That's definitely the
Yeah.
ones to write home about for sure.
Well, it's been a lot. It's been
Yeah,
incredible, man.
yeah,
Incredible.
yeah.
Super
And
interesting.
nowadays, I research a lot, and so I was saying before, I have the two children, the dog, and my youngest son is severely autistic, and he is the class it's pre-verbal, so that's non-verbal. So if you've seen the telepathy tapes and I don't believe Michael has got access to that network like what Kai Dickens talks about. I've not seen any evidence of it,
Hmm.
but it is very interesting. My research just now is I'm looking at how we can use data, so things like data science and to an extent AI on how to we can use it for the phenomenon. But the thing I'm spending most time on is actually how to for the mental health of people who have actually experienced things. And maybe like people like myself coming out today and saying, "Oh, I feel silly talking about it." One of the best things you can do for somebody is actually to be respect. Is that there's a thing called person-centered therapy.
Hmm.
And it's just to be yourself, listen to them, and show empathy. It's not rocket science, but these things are actually mean the world to somebody who's not spoken about it. And so I'm looking at. So I'm actually trained to be a counsellor. I'm finishing off an HNC, which is like a certificate, which would be half of a diploma. But I'm actually toying with the idea of going to do a master's in it instead of actually just so it'd be instead of I'm 2 years and be a qualified counsellor, I have 3 years and actually have a master's degree in it.
Oh wow.
So and it's all due to the paranormal, and it's all with the intent. You can't make money nowadays as a counsellor. It's just there's not enough jobs in it, and I also work in IT at the moment. But the idea would be to just be able to speak to people that have had experience with the phenomena and be able to speak to them and allow them to process what they've gone through, or even just to listen to them. I think being able to listen to people and listen to them compassionately, empathically, and be sincere about it is the biggest gift you can give a lot of people in our community. So that's what I'm
Absolutely,
looking at just now.
100%. 100%, man. That's special.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because so many
yeah,
people have these experiences, so many people,
yeah,
and quite often they don't tell anyone, not even their partner, and
yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
they take this to their grave. And
The
that's,
other thing, yeah, the one thing that really got me wasn't actually somebody that had seen something, but somebody who thought they'd seen something and they hadn't. Somebody was having night terrors, and okay, there's some people might say these are paranormal. I tried to go by the what's more rational first. I just thought I don't think this guy's seen anything paranormal. I think he's seen something that is actually quite explainable, like extreme nightmares. Maybe he's been waking up and he's got sleep paralysis and he's not able to process it. And that actually upset me more than people that have seen something and not processed it. Because if you don't even have a place to go where you're traumatized by something and not be able to speak to somebody and to make sense of your trauma, you're coming to sky watches, that's not right. You need somebody to be able to speak to you And so again, it's not about money. If I do it for the paranormal, I don't think I'll charge any money for it. It's just to say, let's have a cup of tea and chat and see what you went through. You don't, and you don't say to people, right, you saw this, you don't, or you didn't see that. You let that's up to them to decide. Only what you're there to do is to listen and be compassionate and empathetic to people and
Mhm.
sincere. And if you can do that to somebody, that's probably the biggest gift.
100%, man.
Yeah,
100%. Because I know we do podcasts and things, and we get quite used to sharing our experiences.
yeah,
And I don't know about you, I'm very open about just sharing it. I know some people think, I might sound crazy or whatever, but we get to a point where we just get used to sharing it and we get
definitely.
comfortable with sharing it. And it's quite a relief actually once you let it
Oh
go. I
yeah.
remember the first time I started talking about experiences, you are like,
Mhm.
oh man, what, should I be doing this? Should I be telling people this?
Yeah.
But once you've done it, it's such a relief, man. And it's such a like,
Oh,
oh. And
definitely.
then you realize that so many people have experienced similar, the same, or something just as extreme. But, we put all these experiences together and you realize it's actually very normal. There's something more to this realm, reality, whatever you want to call it, that is paranormal, supernatural.
Definitely. And yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that yeah, I remember the first time I let it out, and there's that massive hesitation. But as you said before, we've done it before. Another thing as well is, I don't know about yourself, but say a few of the experiences, even the things I've spoken about tonight, you actually forget about them. And it's only when you
Yes.
talk about them that you actually realize, I actually know that happened. Like the thing with the
Yes.
black eyes, I remember it was years before I actually even realized that that actually happened.
Hmm.
And then, and it's not like it's a dream. It's just almost like I've kind of compared, I've just like blocked that away from my memory. And as you get speaking about it, you remember this happened, that happened, and you start to see that actually the things that you went through are even more extraordinary than the things that. So even again, I've never thought about this, but another thing about being able to speak to people is you'll get more. They'll actually see in themselves that it's not just that one UFO encounter. They'll probably see a ghost. They'll
Hmm.
probably they saw another UFO another day, and they'll start to see there's actually more evidence just by speaking and letting their story out. Yeah,
Absolutely. I was actually going to say that to you as well. Because when I started the podcast, I kind of wrote down a lot of the things I'd experienced.
yeah,
And I went on Paranormal Heart, the first time I went on a podcast with Cat Wald, and I was telling her going through my experiences, and this memory came back to me there and then. And I was like, have I not remembered that for years? Like, and it
yeah,
was such a
yeah.
big thing. And I shared it on the interview. And I was kind of thinking, how have I not remembered that? And I'll tell you what it was. So basically, when I was 14, me and my brother and a few friends were playing football in the street, which we did every day. And this was during the summer. It was a beautiful summer's day. And one of us or me, someone has looked up and said, "What's that?" And we've all looked and seen this, like, it sounds wild, but it was like a futuristic building. You imagine picking up a futuristic building, putting it in the sky and just letting it float, you know?
Jeez, that's
Yeah, it was
incredible.
an incredible thing to see. It was very high
Yeah,
up, so it was hard to see detail, but it was like orange and silver, and it was just there, it was like not moving at all. And we're all watching it, we're like looking, trying to work out what it was. Is it a balloon?
hmm,
We're going through all the things. Is it a plane? It wasn't any of those things as
yeah,
far as we're aware. And what bugs me is we started just playing football again. We
yeah,
stopped and just started
yeah.
playing football. We were young, we wanted to play football, and we just started playing
Mhm.
football. And this memory, so my brother was there. We never really spoke about it after that day. It must have still been there somewhere, but it just kind
Mhm.
of not forgot it, but for whatever reason, never really thought about. I don't know, because it was such an incredible thing to see. But I'm doing this
Mhm.
podcast and I've brought this up, and I'm thinking after, I'm like, man, why? It sounds weird that I've remembered something like that there and then, and not before that moment.
Yeah,
But my brother had listened to that episode, and he called me up because it was the first podcast I was on, so he listened to it, and
yeah.
he called me up and he went, "Bro, what was that thing we saw that day? I remember seeing it. What and why have we never really discussed it?" And I was like, "I'm so glad you've remembered that as well."
Yeah,
and I wasn't just manifesting, this crazy memory out of nowhere. That he remembers it as well, and it was like, wow, what was that? We don't know what it was, but
yeah.
it's an incredible thing to see.
Because you end up gaslighting yourself into not believing what you saw.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, do you know the best example of that was Chris Meek. So, and Chris actually was on Paul Sinclair's show about a month ago. And so the story behind it was I was doing some research on like, things happening in the paranormal around in West Lothian, and I found out a lady who had seen a ghost plane, and she remembers seeing it, and then one of my friends actually researched and found there was actually indeed a crash where actually this lady seen the plane. I spoke to Chris about it, and he went, "Hang on, I remember seeing something like that at school." And both him and his pal had both seen it. And
Whoa.
he spoke to his friend to say, "Do you remember seeing like a phantom plane?" And they both remembered it, but it was only after I said it to them that they'd seen it. So
Wow.
yeah, these like, and that's an incredible thing to say, a ghost plane. But and it sounds silly, but it's as you let, it's almost like you let the dam unblock, and
Hmm.
all of it comes through, and you remember, oh, this happened or that happened. It's
Hmm.
yeah, it's quite an incredible experience actually.
Absolutely. It is wild. We put these memories to the back of our mind sometimes, mate.
Yeah.
If we can't work out what it was, we're like, okay, stop thinking about it. Or I don't know why. I don't know why it is, but
Mm.
they're there. It's incredible, man. It is what, and
Yeah.
probably there's probably a lot of people out there that think they like don't have paranormal experiences, but really they probably have had loads, but just kind of blocked them all out, put them to the back of their mind. If they don't
Yeah.
understand it fully, it's gone, basically.
Yeah. And there's probably people that have had far more experience, more paranormal experience than I have. But maybe I don't know. I'm just speculating. But one thing I've always wondered about is it's maybe our belief systems.
Hmm.
And if we believe that these things can exist, then we're able to process them. And then from there, we're able to say, well, I saw a UFO. Other people might not have that same belief system and compartmentalize it like
Hmm.
we've done. The other thing as well, though, is that I think there's also a bit more of a mysterious part to it. I forgot about one incident, and this was really bizarre. It was actually with a church group, and it was in a place called Dunkeld. Now, Dunkeld's, if you ever heard of Macbeth,
Hmm.
well, Macbeth is like the tree and all that's been associated with him is actually in that area. It's a beautiful part of Scotland, and it was 98, so it was a year before the big encounter. And I remember seeing three helicopters, army style helicopters, flying around the area. And it was the first time I ever got that knowing where you knew there was something there, but I could not see anything. And there was a guy in the group who was disabled. He had like motor damage to his brain. And he went up and pointed and went, "Do you see that craft up there?" I knew there was something there. I had that feeling, but I couldn't see it. I literally couldn't see anything. And there was no security lights to show that there was anything in the vicinity. I went, no. He could see it, but I couldn't. So I think there's actually a number of elements to it. Like I genuinely believe that sometimes they can even make us forget these things. They can make us not see them. But over and above that, there's also the part that we don't process our experiences. So you can see why sometimes skeptics say, actually, have you seen these things? But we know in our hearts, and the people that have listened to us, we know in the hearts that what we've seen is true.
Hmm.
It's just the fact that it's hard to prove what we've seen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Interesting, man. That is interesting.
Yeah,
Because I mean, I've had experiences where someone else has been there as well, and they've seen it.
yeah,
And I mean, every experience you have is amazing, and obviously you've had that experience. But when
yeah.
there's someone else that's with you as well, there's no doubt even in your mind that you've not manifested this. That someone else has seen exactly the same thing, described it exactly how I have. Therefore that is for me that's really undeniable. If there's
Oh,
like two
definitely.
people that have seen it, but we know in our hearts when we see something that's strange or hear something that's strange or feel something that's strange, we know it's paranormal. I feel like
You just know it. Yeah.
yeah,
100%, 100%. It's
Yeah.
you just know
Hmm.
nothing's going to take that away from you. When you've seen that thing, you've seen that building, or you've seen that ghost. There's nothing you know it in your heart, and people can say, "Oh, but it could have been this, it could have been that," but no, it's not. That was what you saw. You know it's that.
Hmm. Absolutely, man. Mark,
Yeah.
I have loved talking to you tonight, brother.
Well,
It's been
thank you
an
for having me on.
absolute blast. I hope it's the first of many conversations. I'd love
Yeah,
to have you back on, man. I'd love to hear more about the history of your area and the
yeah,
other
of
high
course.
strange and stuff that happens there.
Yeah.
Love talking to you, man. Thank you for being so open and honest,
Well,
sharing your
no
experiences,
problem.
man. Can
Well,
you?
thanks.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, man. Can you tell the listeners where they can find you?
Well, the only thing I'm doing just now is I'm doing the Scottish Paranormal Podcast. That's with I'm the co-host. So we're not super active just now. We do an occasional podcast, maybe on average about once a month. So if you want to jump on YouTube and find the Scottish Paranormal Podcast, you could certainly contact us there. That's probably the only way you can contact me at the moment. Actually, I'm on Facebook. I think you're so. If anybody wants to speak to me, I'm currently got several areas of research. I'm doing research in and around Scotland, and I'm happy to speak about what I'm doing. My biggest bit of research is the mental health aspect. I'm also looking at data science and AI and technologies like IoT and how we can actually implement them to get evidence. And the last thing I'm doing is researching things called vitrified forts, which seem to be forts that have been in. It's a very Scottish thing where the hill forts have been subjected to intense heat. So if anybody wants to contact you, Tommy, and ask about these things, please give me a message or speak to me, message Scottish Paranormal Podcast.
Awesome, man. Awesome stuff,
Yeah.
brother. I will do. And I hope, as I say, I'd love to get you back on and talk more and go deeper into some
Yeah.
of those subjects you're looking into.
Yeah, of
Thank you.
course, be happy to.
Thank you very much for your time tonight, brother. I really
No problem.
appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on.
Guys, thank you so much for listening. We hope you've enjoyed the episode. If you have, a great way to support the show is by sharing it where you can. That really does help us. And we'll be back very soon for more freaky conversations. In the meantime, stay safe and keep it freaky. Bye for now. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, well, thanks, Tommy. And